You know that feeling when you check your bank account and instead of immediately closing the app in horror, you actually smile. Like when you stop calculating whether you can afford that coffee or if buying groceries means eating ramen for the rest of the week. There's a specific number where this shift happens, and it's not what most people think. Most financial gurus will tell you that you need $1 million to feel wealthy, or that six figures is the magic number. But here's the thing they're missing. There's a much smaller milestone that completely transforms your relationship with money. And once you hit it, everything changes. That number is $20,000. My name is Susan, and I spend way too much time thinking about money, financial psychology, and why some people seem to effortlessly build wealth while others stay stuck in the same financial patterns for decades. If you're someone who wants to understand the real mechanics behind wealth building instead of just hoping things will magically improve, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if it ends up helping you see money differently. Now, before we dive into why $20,000 is the real game changer, let me ask you something. When you think about building wealth, what comes to mind? Maybe you picture some trust fund kid who never had to worry about money. Or perhaps you imagine someone grinding away for years, slowly accumulating wealth $1 at a time. The truth is, wealth building doesn't work the way most people think it does. Here's what actually happens. There are certain financial thresholds that act like invisible barriers. Once you cross them, the rules of the game completely change. $20,000 is the first major threshold that separates those who will build significant wealth from those who will spend their entire lives living paycheck to paycheck. And the crazy part is most people have no idea this threshold even exists. Think about it this way. If you've ever tried to push a heavy boulder up a hill, you know that getting it started is the hardest part. You're straining, sweating, making very little progress, and questioning whether it's even possible. But once you build enough momentum, something magical happens. The boulder starts moving faster, and eventually when you reach the top, it rolls down the other side almost effortlessly. $20,000 is that turning point where your financial boulder finally crests the hill. Everything before this point feels like you're pushing uphill against gravity. And when you reach bigger numbers, the acceleration becomes almost automatic. Once your investments hit around $400,000, generating the next $20,000 can happen in just a few months. The same amount that took years of saving initially now arrives through growth instead of extra effort. The first milestone feels difficult, but each one after that becomes easier because your money starts doing more of the work. You might think wealthy people have access to secret opportunities, exclusive funds, or insider strategies. While ultra-high wealth can open different doors, that isn't what drives this effect. It's basic mathematics. If you invest $1,000 and it grows 10%, you earn $100. Apply that same 10% to $10,000 and you earn $1,000. Same percentage, bigger base, bigger result. This is why $20,000 feels like a turning point. Early returns on small amounts seem tiny. 10% of $2,000 is only $200, but once you reach $20,000, that same 10% becomes $2,000. Now the growth is meaningful. With $20,000 invested at 8% annually, you might generate around $1,600 per year without additional work. That is money created by your existing assets instead of your labor. The strategy itself isn't complicated. It's the discipline to save, invest, and let time work in your favor. As balances grow, returns grow. As returns grow, momentum builds. The system rewards consistency rather than perfection. You can buy the exact same index funds, use the same broker, follow the same basic principles. The only real difference is scale. And that scale turns small percentage gains into real financial progress. But here's the part most people completely miss, and honestly, it might be the most important point in this video. When you save $20,000, you accomplish something far more valuable than just stacking money in a bank account. You rewire your brain and build the most important financial habit you'll ever develop. And I know that can sound like self-help talk, but stay with me. This is where it gets practical. Think about what it actually takes to save $20,000 from zero. Unless you're making ridiculous money or living rent-free, it requires real discipline. You track where your money goes. You say no to things you want. You resist blowing your savings on whatever catches your attention. And most importantly, you do it consistently for months, maybe even years. Here's the key. You prove to yourself that you can control your money instead of letting it control you. You become the type of person who can delay gratification when it matters. That's not just a financial skill. That's a life skill. This identity shift changes every decision you make going forward. Before you had $20,000 saved, even a $4 coffee could turn into a mental debate. After you hit that number, you're not sweating the small stuff anymore because you know your priorities are in place. You've already proven you can make bigger sacrifices when necessary. And there's another psychological shift most people don't talk about. You start seeing opportunities instead of just threats. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, every unexpected expense feels like a disaster. Car repairs, a broken laptop, laptop, rent going up. They derail your month. But when you have $20,000 in the bank, those same events become inconveniences, not emergencies. Car needs repairs? Annoying, but manageable. Laptop dies? Maybe it's time for an upgrade. Rent goes up? Maybe it's time to negotiate your salary or look for something better. That's the shift. You move from reacting out of fear to making decisions from stability. Even better, you start noticing opportunities that were always there. You just couldn't act on them before. A friend says they're launching a business and looking for investors. Before, you'd think, sounds interesting, and move on. Now you can actually consider putting $5,000 into it. A great deal shows up on a rental property that needs some work. Before, you'd scroll past it and maybe feel a little envy. Now you can run the numbers and decide if it makes sense. Your boss mentions a conference in another city that could boost your career, but the company won't cover it. Before, you'd say you can't afford it. Now, you evaluate the potential return. This is what wealthy people mean when they say money goes to money. It's not some cosmic reward system. It's simple. Having money gives you options. And options create opportunities to make more money. Around the $20,000 mark, something else shifts, and it might challenge how you think about budgeting. You stop obsessing over small expenses and start focusing on big ones. When you're broke, every purchase feels critical. Name brand or generic, coffee out or at home, premium or regular gas, each dollar feels heavy, so you spend mental energy on tiny decisions. But with a solid financial base, you realize most of those micro choices barely move the needle. Saving a few dollars on coffee might add up to something over a year, but it won't define your financial future. What actually matters are the big decisions: where you live, what you drive, how much you save, and how you invest. Those choices can change your net worth by tens of thousands over time. So instead of stressing over organic bananas, you focus on lowering housing costs, increasing income, and strengthening your investment strategy. That shift is freeing. You stop sweating small stuff and start thinking strategically about building wealth. Now let's talk about what happens to your career once you hit this milestone. This is where things get really interesting. Having $20,000 saved doesn't just change your relationship with money, it changes your relationship with work. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you're stuck. Your boss might be terrible, your coworkers toxic, the work exhausting, but you can't leave because you need that next paycheck. That puts you in a weak position. You don't ask for a raise because you're afraid of getting fired. You don't push back on unreasonable demands. Even going to interviews feels risky. You're stuck, and everyone senses it, but $20,000 shifts the dynamic. Suddenly, you have what I call walking away money. You could quit and survive for months while finding something better. It doesn't mean being reckless, it means negotiating from strength instead of desperation. That psychological shift changes how you show up. You ask for the raise you deserve because the worst they can say is no. You push back when something's unreasonable. You explore new opportunities because you can afford a bit of risk. Here's the surprising part. Most of the time, you never even use that money. Just knowing it's there changes your energy. You become more confident, more assertive, more willing to take on bigger challenges. And people notice. You start getting better projects, more recognition, and yes, often more money. It's like having a superpower you hope you never need, but knowing it's there changes how you operate. And as your confidence grows, your income often grows with it, which builds even more wealth. It becomes a positive feedback loop that accelerates over time. But here's where many people mess up, and I see this all the time. They reach $20,000, feel that confidence boost, and then immediately spend it on something stupid. Maybe you start thinking you deserve a new car after being so disciplined, or you book an expensive vacation because you've earned it, or you use the money as a down payment on a house that's honestly stretching your budget. Don't do that. That $20,000 isn't a reward. It's the foundation of your financial future. It's the seed that can grow into real, even generational wealth if you let it compound. Here's something most people don't think about. Over a lifetime, the average person spends more on cars than it would take to reach financial independence. Car payments, insurance, maintenance, gas, easily $600 to $800 a month. Over 40 years, that's $400,000 or more just for transportation. And at the same time, people say they can't afford to invest. It's like paying for a gym membership you never use while saying healthy food is too expensive. And it gets worse. The moment you drive a new car off the lot, it loses around 20% of its value. You're not just spending money, you're destroying wealth. Invest that same amount in a diversified portfolio, and instead of watching it shrink, you watch it grow. Now, I get it. Cars are emotional. You want something reliable, something that looks good, something that makes you feel successful. That's fine, as long as you understand the trade-off. That car payment might feel like wealth, but it's often keeping you from building it. When you have $20,000 saved, your perspective shifts. You stop asking, can I afford the monthly payment? And start asking, what is this costing me an opportunity? That $30,000 car isn't just $30,000. Invested over 20 years, it could turn into over $200,000. Suddenly, driving a reliable used car doesn't feel like a sacrifice. It feels strategic. It feels like you're buying freedom. And here's the irony. The person in the flashy new car is often stressed about money, while the one driving the older Honda is quietly building wealth and sleeping better at night. This mindset carries into every major decision: housing, education, vacations, hobbies. Everything gets filtered through opportunity cost, not in a joyless, obsessive way, but in a deliberate, intentional way. And something surprising happens. You realize you don't actually want half the things you thought you did. The bigger apartment sounds nice, but is it worth delaying financial independence by 5 years? The expensive hobby is fun, but are there simpler ways to enjoy it? This isn't about being cheap, it's about being intentional. When you understand your goals and the power of compound growth, it's easier to separate impulse from priority. $20,000 won't make you rich overnight, but it will change how you think about money, work, and opportunity. It's the difference between surviving and designing your life. Start building that foundation today. Your future self is depending on the decision you make right now, and trust me, they'll thank you for it.